Hi everyone, it's been a while since I've done a video, but I got some inspiration this week from Nancy, who wanted to take my class that I was doing at my sewing room. I don't know when I'll be teaching it again, if I will be teaching it again, and I know especially at the minute with the world being as it is and us not being able to get out as much, people are looking for things to do. So she wanted to teach English paper piecing and sort of do some English paper piecing with her grandchildren. So this video is also for Riley and Taylor and maybe Wyatt. So this is going to be a series of small videos because some of this stuff you might already know, other things might be useful for people who are already making paper pieced bits and pieces, because I have 3 different basting techniques to show you, and I have a couple of different ways that I like to sew them together. So first off, we will be looking at, and I'll show you these 3 basting techniques. So the next video will have 2 thread basting techniques. There is one where we go through the paper. So these are English paper piecing pieces are always fabric wrapped around paper. So we'll have one that goes like that. There will also be one where the thread is all completely on the reverse of the hexagon. So that makes it easier to pull those papers out. English paper piecing, if you were wondering, is ideal if you're looking for a hand working project. You don't have to use a sewing machine. It's nice and portable. Take it, do it in front of the TV, take it if you're visiting people, put it in your bag, put it in the car. You can also use it to help with more complicated shapes that are harder to do by machines, like with Y seams. So if we take the hexagons, for example, you have that Y where they all join. That can be kind of hard to do on the sewing machine. So that's another reason why you might want to choose English paper piecing. And yeah, it's quite a historical way of doing things. We're going to make one of these together, these flower shapes, but you can work them in rows and then make a bigger panel, which you could use to make a pillow or a quilt if you were making a really large project. And you can also just stick to one if you wanted to and just applique it to something. If you do choose to applique though, you want to keep all your papers in, applique it, because the papers need to stay in as long as you can possibly keep them in for until you're ready to sew them into something else. And then once you've sewn around all of these edges, you can then cut the backing fabric and then pull those papers out. But we'll get into that more in another episode. The second video, so I guess the third video, because this is the first one, will be about glue basting. Now, this is a very quick way of putting it together, and it's my favourite way of making hexagons, but I have found that on YouTube there are a few glue basting tutorials and they're not quite the way that I do it. So this is my preferred method, and it uses a little bit of glue, not a lot of glue, to make those papers even easier to pull out. And then the 4th video will be sewing them together. You will need some scissors, you will need some paper shapes. So you can buy these in quilt stores, you can print your own if you want to, you can cut them on like scrapbooking machines like the scan and cut. If you're making hexagons and you see 1-inch hexagon, that's the length of the sides. So if you go to 1.5 inches, you can imagine that they're going to be quite a lot bigger. So it's not the diameter of the shape, it's the edges on hexagons in particular. But you can get all sorts of shapes. You can get diamonds, you can even get curved shapes that fit together like apple cores and that kind of thing, clamshells and that kind of thing. So you'll need some paper shapes. For my tutorials, I do prefer to use the Sewline glue pen. It is the same as the Fons and Porter brand. They do all fit together, they just look a different colour, but they're all the same type of glue. There's also Bohin that make them as well, so they're all interchangeable. You can try the Elmer's glue stick if you prefer and you don't have one of those to hand, but it's not quite as sticky and it might pull your fabric off your paper a little bit more. And then for threads and for needles, I usually say for when you're sewing them together, use the finest needle that you can work with. So if you struggle to see those really tiny eyes in the needle, don't struggle with those. Get the next size up that you're actually comfortable to work with. For basting, I have a couple of recommendations. You can either just grab some kind of thick thread. This is because the idea of this basting thread is to remove it at the end in most cases. So you can either choose a nice thick one that's easy to see and easy to pull out. You can also use, if you are a quilter and you use a machine quite regularly, you might have bobbins with all sorts of different colours, like spare like you want to get rid of that thread off those bobbins and you want to use that up, you can use that, and that would be a sort of an economical way of getting rid of some of that thread that you no longer need. Just whatever you have to hand, as long as you can see it. And then for sewing them together, I like to recommend 80 weight polyester thread. So this one is Deco Bob, which is by Wonderfil, but you can get other brands. There's the Bottom Line, for example, from Superior Threads. And if you prefer to use cotton, that's fine too. You just want to get the thinnest one you can, which is, in my experience, I haven't seen anything lighter than a 60 weight cotton. So that's kind of the tools that you need. You don't really need any more than that. You can use a rotary cutter on a mat if you want to, but I find scissors are just fine. And so, yep, skip on over into lesson 1 and we'll get on with some basting.